Hey, thank you guys for showing up today. Caught me in the middle of eating this orange. Um, so good. Um, Really, it was given to us by the PTA. But man, I don't know if I can eat this all. I just might toss it in the trash. I mean, wait. If you guys were here, you tell me that somebody else might want this. You guys were here, you probably tell me that we could probably use this for something else. So, what else could we do with this type of leftover trash? What else could we do but put it in a landfill? Well, over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've really been looking at how humans can impact and reduce, reuse, recycle, how we impact pollution, how we impact the water cycle. And today, I want to talk to you guys about how things like this, things that would be thrown away, could be used as alternative uses of fuel. So many of the alternative fuel sources that we're going to be discussing today come from things like wood waste, crop waste, and even animal waste, manure. And these types of fuels are what we call biofuels. And that's important to us because today we're going to continue our journey to explore alternative fuels as we learn about agricultural's role in alternative energy. So let's be attentive learners as we begin our explorations today. So first of all, let's talk, and let me change this up a little bit so that you guys can see a little bit better. Let's talk about alternative energy from agriculture. So first, let's review about what is renewable. Okay, so renewable means we can get it back. So renewable energy is energy from sources that we can keep going back to. We can keep utilizing it because we're not going to run out. It's not like fossil fuels and non-renewable resources. We can keep coming back to it. And so agriculture and renewable energy are a winning combination. So wind, solar, and biomass energy can be harvested for a long time. That image says forever. But also, it can help, these sources of energy can provide farmers with a long-term source of income. So today, we're going to be looking at 4 major types of alternative energy, renewable sources of energy. And we're going to start with wind power.
We've been harnessing the wind since the ancient Egyptians used sailboats to travel, and windmills were used in agriculture in China over 2,000 years ago. Americans were using wind turbines to produce electricity as early as the 1800s. You may have seen fields of turbines in wide open spaces where you live, since more than 3/4 of US states produce wind energy on a large scale. They may look small from a distance, but a modern turbine can be as tall as a 20-story building, with airplane wing-shaped blades that are as long as a football field. The blades spin at a slow speed of about 1 revolution every 3 seconds. A computer inside the box that sits at the top of the tower controls the direction of the blades to make sure they capture the most wind possible. The blades are connected to faster spinning gears inside the box that create kinetic energy. A generator converts that energy into electricity, which travels down the tower through a cable. The cable connects to the power grid that serves our communities. See? All it takes is a little fresh air to make the turbines go round.
We're farming the wind. Wind energy alone could provide $1.2 billion in income for farmers and rural landowners by this year if we invested wisely, and as well as create 80,000 new jobs in the workforce. Farmers can benefit from wind energy in a lot of different ways, including generating their own power so they don't have to rely on getting power from power companies. They'd be able to create their own power using wind turbines and generators, leasing land to wind developers, and becoming wind developers themselves. So, one wind turbine uses only about 1/4 of an acre of land, 0.25 of an acre. And that's including access roads so that people can go and repair any damage that might be caused from storms or ice or anything that could damage that tower. So farmers can continue to plant crops on their land and graze livestock right up to the base of the wind turbine and earn up to $2,000 per year, usually $2,000 per turbine. Until recently, wind power was concentrated mostly in California, but now it can be found in most states. Farming regions in the Midwest, the Great Plains, and the West have emerged as major growth areas for the wind industry. Now, also, the coast of North Carolina is a major growth area for the wind industry. So, net metering means that farmers will get the most out of their wind turbines. That's when a turbine produces more power than the farm needs at that moment. And then that extra power flows back into the electrical system for other customers to use, and then the farmer gets paid by the electric company for that extra energy that they are generating for consumer use. A farmer or a group of farmers could actually invest and become a wind developer who produces powers to sell to others. And so electric companies are increasingly there to help buy power from independent power producers like farmers rather than generating it themselves. Our next look is breaking down these different types of what we call biofuels. Biofuels are made and composed of or produced from biological raw materials. So biodiesel typically comes from soybeans or sugarcane. Ethanol in the United States typically comes from corn. Methane, well, comes from plant and animal waste. So, as we go through, I'm going to kind of introduce a video about each type of fuel, and then we're going to kind of go over why that fuel can have an impact on agriculture. So, we're going to start with biodiesel.
If your car has a diesel engine, it can run on biodiesel fuel, usually without requiring any modifications. While biodiesel and petroleum diesel are similar in energy efficiency and fuel economy, biodiesel is more eco-friendly. For starters, it can be made from what would otherwise have been waste. For example, from vegetable oil of your local fast food joint. The restaurant simply discards its used fryer oil in a receptacle out back. Every few days, a vacuum truck comes by to collect it. In its current state, the oil contains water and food particles, making it unusable for biodiesel production, so the truck transports it to a filtering plant. There, they pump the oil into a holding tank, then heat it up to draw out the water. Once they drain the water, the oil is ready to enter a multi-stage filtering process. First, the oil goes through a vibrating sieve, which strains out the larger pieces of debris. After this first filtering, the oil is already visibly cleaner. Next, it passes through a second vibrating sieve. This one has a finer mesh, therefore it catches smaller particles of debris. After the second stage, the oil looks clean, but still contains microscopic debris. So it enters the third and final filtering stage, passing through 20 ultrafine filter cloths, which trap any particles larger than 1 micron in size. A micron is about 80 times smaller than the width of a human hair. The captured debris leaves a muddy residue on the filters. That vegetable oil which once deep-fried potatoes is now ready to cook up some diesel fuel. Another source of oil for making biodiesel is beef tallow, oil derived from cow fat. Biodiesel producers typically buy tallow from facilities like this one, which specialize in cleaning cow hides for leather tanneries. Sharp revolving blades shear off the fat from the back of the hide. The fat drops onto a conveyor, which moves it into a steam injection cook tank. The tank heats the fat to a gentle boil, extracting the oil. Everything else leaves the tank and drops into a waste container. The oil moves onward, passing through a two-stage filtration process. Whether the raw material is vegetable oil or beef tallow, the biodiesel producers refer to this main ingredient as feedstock. When the feedstock arrives at the biodiesel plant, it goes into a holding tank until production time. This demonstration illustrates the production recipe. They take the feedstock and combine it with methanol, a type of wood alcohol, as well as with a catalyst, which triggers a chemical reaction. A processing unit mixes everything thoroughly while applying heat and pressure. The resulting chemical reaction produces a harmless byproduct, glycerin, a common ingredient in soaps and cosmetics. Processing consumes much of the methanol. Then they remove even more, leaving just a tiny percentage of it in the finished biodiesel. To ensure their fuel meets international regulatory standards, the plant's quality control lab tests samples from each production run. In this flammability test, they heat the fuel to 135 degrees Celsius, then apply a flame to see whether the gases ignite. If they do, they have to remove more methanol to make the fuel safe. If they don't ignite, the fuel meets international safety standards. Biodiesel costs more at the pump, but emits significantly less carbon dioxide and monoxide, and 85% fewer cancer-causing agents into the air we breathe.
Biodiesel is an alternative fuel that can be made from any vegetable oils, animal fats, or greases. It can be used in any diesel engine with minor or no modifications. Most modern diesel engines can run biodiesel with no changes to them. Biodiesel delivers the similar torque, horsepower, and miles per gallon as a regular petroleum-based diesel. Also, biodiesel is safe, biodegradable, and it reduces the emissions of most air pollutants. The Pacific diesel has a different way of going about basically creating biodiesel. They use restaurant fryer oil. They basically go to different restaurants in more metropolitan areas, and they collect from Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, all of these restaurants, and even independently owned restaurants. And they collect the fryer oil, which is usually soybean oil or peanut oil, and they transform that biodiesel using the biodiesel process that we talked about and saw to basically make fuel. This is a wonderful a renewable source of power and energy. And it also helps that it's made from soybeans, which is a major crop that's produced by almost 400,000 farmers in 29 states. Now, ethanol. Introduce and talk a little bit about ethanol. So ethanol is an alcohol-based fuel made from sugars found in grains like corn, sorghum, wheat, as well as potato skins, rice, sugarcane, sugar beets, and even yard clippings. In the United States, corn is the major crop used for ethanol production. However, across the world, both sugarcane and sugar beets are the most common ingredients for ethanol in places like Brazil. So, guys, let's take a look at how ethanol is produced in the United States.
How ethanol is made. Ethanol can come from things that grow. Starchy crops, sweet crops, and even plants or trees. These are what we call cellulosic material. But how do those crops get from the field to your fuel tank? It's a process that starts by grinding the feedstock into small particles and pulverizing the starch into a fine powder. Now add water, and you have a nice mash going. Add a special enzyme, and the starch breaks down into teensy-tiny little particles. Want to see the starch liquefy and reduce bacteria? Turn the mash way down low to simmer. Now crank up the heat, and the starch breaks down even more. Cool! No, really, cool the mash before adding a second enzyme. This one helps to convert the liquid starch to a sugar, or dextrose as we science types call it. And now it's time for fermentation. Let's synchronize. For the next 48 hours, we're mixing mash and yeast. As all you chemists and magicians know, this is where the sugar, presto, changes to ethanol, and the natural carbon dioxide is separated. See this fermented mash? It contains about 10% ethanol. But which 10%? To extract that ethanol, crank up the heat again and watch the ethanol vaporize. Then cool, then condense into this splish-splash liquid form. Now, you want to purify the mix, so remove any remaining H2O. And what's left is ethanol, about 200 proof. Potent, but it can't be potable, which explains the next step. Add a small amount of gasoline, from 2 to 5%. That's called denaturing, and it's a requirement for all fuel-grade ethanol. What happens to the leftovers? Well, nothing goes to waste. The distiller's grain becomes a nutritious livestock feed, and carbon dioxide goes into carbonated beverages and dry ice. The remaining ethanol, like any fuel, is sold to distributors for delivery to neighborhood stations. What's at your pump? E10, a blend of 10% ethanol, can be used in almost any car manufactured since 1980. And E85, a blend that contains 85% ethanol, is for the increasing number of flex fuel vehicles on the road. Just so you know, the same process that converts corn into ethanol works with sugar too, and biomass, which is just another name for the waste from fields and forests. Today, look around. There are ethanol production plants all over the U.S., with more popping up all the time. That means more ethanol-enriched gasoline available in more places. So next time your tank is on E, fill her up with a high-performance, renewable, ethanol-enriched fuel. It's good for your car, because it runs cleaner and cooler. It's good for your country, because it adds American jobs and reduces U.S. dependence on foreign oil. And it's better for your environment, because it's a renewable fuel that greatly reduces harmful tailpipe emissions. And to think, it all started with corn. To learn more, visit our website at www.drivingethanol.org.
Ethanol and alcohol is created by fermenting sugar, that decomposing sugars with yeast. Sugar crops are usually the easiest ingredients to convert into ethanol, but scientists are working on cheaper ways to make ethanol by using all parts of the plant, not just the starch and the seed and the grain, but the leaves, the stems, the roots. And so farmers have been experimenting with what they call hardy or woody crops in small poplar trees and switchgrass to see if they can grow them cheaply, quickly, and abundantly enough for ethanol production. which will go through the similar process that we saw with corn to produce ethanol gas. Now, someday you might find yourself driving by huge farms that are not producing food or animal feed, but feedstock, raw material for ethanol. So we call feedstock the raw material that's used to make a product. Now, another type of product that we get used to make ethanol is switchgrass. Switchgrass provides high yields, lots of raw material, and it can be harvested many years in a row before having to go back and replant it. Some fast-growing trees can also make excellent energy crops since they grow back repeatedly even after being cut off very close to the ground. Now, finally, let's take a look and introduce methane and
Renewable
biogas.
Energy 101. Biomass, the original renewable energy. It's been part of our lives since our ancestors learned to control fire. In fact, it's made possible by the sun, whose energy is absorbed by trees and plants through photosynthesis, and then released when organic matter is burned or decomposes. First, there's plant waste. Wood scraps, sawdust, and crop waste can be collected from farms or manufacturers. The waste is burned to heat water. The hot water creates steam. The pressure of the steam spins a turbine. The turbine powers a generator. The generator creates electricity. Simple, really. Next up, animal waste, also known as the problem of cow poop. The solution? Waste from farm animals can be collected in a large tank called a digester, filled with bacteria that eats the waste and converts it to methane gas. The methane is captured and burned to heat water and create steam. Sound familiar? Second verse, same as the first. This same principle can also be used to capture methane, a potent greenhouse gas with 25 times the heat-trapping ability of carbon dioxide, from landfills. Once a section of the landfill is closed off, pipes are run from the waste to collect the gas, which can then be burned to make electricity or heat. Biomass may not be the prettiest form of renewable energy, and it needs to be used carefully and thoughtfully to protect ecosystems and prevent greenhouse gas emissions. But it can be a smart way to make use of waste. Power to the poop.
This is the one that's going to kind of gross you guys out a little bit because it's made from animal and food waste. It's basically using poo, waste, manure, so that they can turn what would be thrown away into a money-making product. See, most farmers used to burn or plow under their farm waste, especially with cotton, rice, peanuts, sugarcane. After they got the grain or they got the cotton or they dug the peanuts and they got everything they needed, they try to find other uses like making hay with peanuts. But as soon as the stuff that they made money off of was harvested, a lot of times they would burn it or plow it back into the ground for it to be decomposed. But new technologies have come apart that can convert biomass, that leftover material from plants and animals, into valuable fuel. And it may give farmers and ranchers money-making alternatives away from burning all fields and plowing under any farm waste. Small biomass energy products can provide many needed benefits to rural areas that are involved in agriculture. For example, a biomass generator could be installed in a local feedlot or a local dairy that would use that waste and manure as its number one fuel source. And this would save on the feedlot's problem of manure disposal, reduce the odors at the feedlot, and provide jobs in the local community to work that digester and that biomass generator to convert that manure into methane gas. Methane is created through a process called anaerobic digestion, like we saw in the video. And this process through which waste such as leaves and manure are broken down in an oxygen-free environment by bacteria. Bacteria give off a greenhouse gas, mostly methane, a little carbon dioxide, and the methane biogas can then be burned to produce a renewable energy. And create electricity and thermal energy. Some dairy farmers collect biogas from tanks that they call digesters. They pull off the muck and manure off from their barns and from their floors and their feedlots, and those digesters then turn that manure into methane biogas. One example that I'm going to give to y'all on Canvas, a quick video, is the Stallbush Island Farm, which is a prominent vegetable canner. They unveiled their very own biogas plant digester that converts waste vegetables into an electrical and thermal energy. The biogas plant utilizes anaerobic digestion to capture methane and other greenhouse gases. The methane biogas produced is then converted into green energy, and it's used to power the farm at Stallbush Family Island Farms. In the event that Stallbush Island Farms creates its more renewable energy than it's needed, then it's sold back to the power company for their use. So, guys, that is going to end our video for today. I want to thank you all for being attentive and being involved in class this semester. I know it's been tough. I know it's been different. But eventually, guys, things will get back to normal. And we will return in the future and be able to talk about that year that we spent learning from home. So, guys, have a wonderful winter break, and I will see you guys in the future.